show 6 o'clock. I'll call this meeting of the Jefferson County Board of Zoning Appeals to order. Terry Reynolds, if you'll listen tonight, the word of prayer, please.
Father, we come to you now with heavy hearts and in the loss of one of our finest here that provides the services that we need in our county. We ask that you be with the Potter family during this time, that you can give them the comfort they need. Father, we only know that the blessings that you bestow upon us in our lives sometimes are short and sweet, and we know that he has a sweet family, Lord, that really is going to need help and encouragement. We ask that you continue to be with our county as we prosper and grow, that you lead and guide us in all that we do, and you provide us with all the things that we need for our lives. And we thank you so much for all the good weather and the rain that we've had lately, Lord, for we surely need it. But most of all, Lord, we thank you for your Son. In his name, amen.
Amen.
Attention, salute, pledge. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, you received your packet. I trust that you had an opportunity to look at your minutes. Do we have any corrections? Being none, looking for a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay, any further discussion? Favor? Aye. All those opposed? Zoning appeals. I think this one. Yeah. BZA, it's RV Park. We have Miss Beth Nelson with us tonight.
So Beth Nelson, 470 Judson Road, Strawberry Plains. So I'm here to talk about A1 and the request for an allowable use and see if a church camp is an allowable use in A1. We continue to battle our issues in A1. I see that RV parks, RV camping, primitive camping, subject to our own developmental standards, are an allowable use in A1. I see no definition of church camps in A1. Our zoning resolution, I do not see a similar use. I would also like to add, the property that has requested for a church camp, I checked with environmental today. They have not been issued a septic permit. They were issued a building permit to build a shed, 2 sheds actually. They have two over 3,000 square foot structures on that property now with no septic. So I want to know what number of beds are in these facilities that they have built without a septic permit and how that happened and how they're going to do that. I also want to note that the property appears to be above another parcel and what the rainwater damage plans are for that. And also, how do we deal with the fact that we're allowed one living structure per parcel in A1. However, there's 2 huge structures, and if you would like to see pictures, I have those. So I'm asking for you to deny church camps specifically in A1. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Nelson. Do I have a Mike Asbury? That's the Planning Commission. I'm sorry. Forgive me. It's RV Park. Oakside Gateway. Okay, that was all the citizens' input for Board of Zoning Appeals. We'll move on down the agenda to item number 6, determination if a church-related camp is allowed in the A1 agricultural forestry zone. Do we have anyone here to speak on
Jorge,
that?
I think yeah, you need to come up
Okay.
to the podium. Let him explain exactly what, I only got to meet him a couple of weeks ago. He got the building permit in April for 2 sheds. I wasn't aware of it for a couple of weeks ago, and he came, Tom Carter, Environmental, sent him over. He was trying to get building permit, or septic permits. So explain to them, to the board, exactly what you,
Yeah, we had a property for a long time, and then we had a mission. The mission name is For More Soul for His Glory. We support 35 missionaries in the world in 9 countries. And then we had this piece of property, and we use every year, for picnic on the church. This Saturday we had a picnic in the church, and every year we had a camp for the kids. This, from 13 years old to 17, 19 years old. And this group every year is coming more, more and more. And then we had a cabin in the property, but they kind of sleeping, everybody in the cabin. This is the reason that we, on April, we say, okay, maybe we need building something, a shed, for they can sleeping, and then later we do the soil study, the soil, and they apply for put bathroom and the regular cabin. This is what happened. This is the reason that our camp is June 3rd. It's between April to June 3rd. We try to building, to a structure to a kid can sleeping inside.
And one thing, this was all conveyed I came myself and I spoke with the planning department and everything. This was all conveyed
He's my son.
to them beforehand, so nothing, I want to make clear, was done in private, because of course we're not trying to hide anything. We are a Christian institution. We are, I have brought a flyer for you guys to look at as well. This is us. This is our group. So yeah, I just want that to be clear as well.
And this is the reason that we don't try to cut corners, nothing. Just we have one camp in June 3rd. After that, I come in and I say, okay, we need to put the right permit for put 2 bathrooms in each cabins, and what we need to do. We do the soil study with Grandan, my friend, and we are here for, say, what we need to do.
Just to be completely clear, we want to do the things the right way.
Yeah.
And that's why, he told us it would be a good idea to come over here and see what do you guys recommend the best way to go forward to try to make this thing happen.
I do have a question for you. So it just takes place once a year, the camp?
Right now, yes, and the 2 times a year picnic, a picnic
church
for the
picnic.
church, and we want to do a camp, with the property, to also another churches can come in, and use the properties, beautiful properties, the lake, Dandridge, everybody. I don't know. I think and also our purpose, is about the, share the gospel, the word of God. We are in this business, just that. But your guys tell me what we do.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to say or question they'd like to ask?
So you really don't have a maximum number of people that would actually be coming here and staying at one time, do you? You don't know that because it just depends on.
We have around 50 to 60 kids, and this group growing, I think that I think it's possible we want hungry people,
because 5 cabins, and that is the, well, our target, but
Okay. And what are the sheds for? What were they for?
So just explain, maybe you didn't understand at the beginning. Right now, we're trying to go through the process to turn in those quote-unquote sheds into actual living space for the campers. So that's why we're going through the process, seeing if we can put into, you know, a septic system or whatever we need to do per test. That's why we wanted to come and see what do you guys advise us to do, to be able to do this the right way, to be able to get the right permits in place so that one day these things can be used for campers.
in this property is no smoking, no alcohol, no drug, no, you know, this is it. We're looking for a Christian camp.
It's a 6 or 7 acre tract, right?
7.
7 acre tract.
7 acres.
Yeah, I've already seen you send it.
We try to also the building, they are, you know, very good buildings for the
For the
community.
safety and-
For the community, you know.
Yeah, I think what it is the scope of this project, and, for an A1, because for me, for some reason, I think it fits more in a rural residential. And it's because of the type of structures that you're gonna have there, because you're gonna have multiple people living there, as far as that goes. I'm not sure it's a fit in A1, but I think with our RR, it could be, because the type of houses you have here could be sort of considered like condominium type things as far as it goes, or apartments per se, even though you may not just rent them out. You may not rent them out, but it's that, to me, that's the type of use. So I see this being more into an RR zone than I do an A1 zone, where it's actually now, which would require the property to be rezoned.
So also, I wanna make clear too, that people aren't living in these things. The idea is for people never to be living in these, but only to merely use them as for a couple of days during a camp. Just wanna make that clear.
Okay, so I think there's a misconception there on a lot of times people, when people look at that. If you sleep and eat in things, then it's called, you're habitating there. And so it doesn't really matter how many days that you're habitating there. If you are doing that, then basically it's considered living there. And so, I mean, I think it should be, right now in my opinion, I think this should be in an RR zone. We have a zone that that this would fit more in, which would be, you would request for your property to be rezoned to RR. To me, that's my opinion. I don't know what the other members of the board are thinking. That's my opinion, right now. And then the other thing is that once your property is zoned RR, you're definitely gonna need a detailed site plan. And with that, showing your structure, your buildings, your access, your parking, and those types of things, okay, that need to go along with that. And the utilities and everything that's involved. Right now, your water source, is it a well?
Yeah.
Well, okay. All right. Because the other thing's gonna come into play, and I'm pretty sure Tom's gonna address this, is that you have 7 acres of land, and it depends upon the scope and how many people you think you're gonna have there is gonna depend upon how much good soil he has. That's gonna really limit how many people can stay there, basically. Yeah.
As far as him doing the site plan, what he anticipating doing, he needs to bring that site plan to us, and then we'll get some soil analysis, determine if we've got enough area to accommodate what you're wanting to do. And, you can do anything beforehand, but then you might have to come back, cut back, keep the soils over there, because most of that soil, what you have presently are very fertile areas.
Yeah.
So it's limited on some of the soils you can use over there.
Yeah.
Have you had it soil mapped yet?
Yeah,
Part of it.
Part of
Part of
it,
it.
but not the whole thing.
Not the whole thing. And
I would-
that's my understanding, we've only got part of it at the office that you soil map. We don't have the rest of it, because you know what all you need to do.
Right.
Yeah.
I would suggest you do that before you even think about rezoning it.
Okay.
Because you might not be able to get more with environmental
Right.
before you spend any more money.
Is that,
I mean, that's according to what they tell you tonight. I always tell people to soil test before you do anything.
Tom,
Yeah.
is the public, are they allowed to drink well water?
Yes. You can, go to the state, you know, according to, how many people you go to the state, and get a permit to use well water for the water source, where there's not the utility.
So
Well,
it's gotta be, it's gotta pass them,
Yeah.
okay.
So, I think the suggestion's been made to get it soil mapped and tested and get Mr. Carter's office and see where that stands. And if everything looks good there, or you get your numbers and then come back and meet with Tim and them, put in a request
Yeah,
to get it
come back
rezoned.
next month and try to rezone it.
Try to rezone it.
Then you go in front of county commission in October.
perfect.
They have
Yeah.
time to say.
Chairman.
I have some
Well,
comments,
that's-
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, let you go first and Tim come back in there. And I want to say this, we're giving them some direction tonight, but we'll still come back and vote on what's on the agenda at the end of this, about whether we're going to allow those in A1 or not. But we're giving them direction on what they need to do tonight, so if you would, go ahead.
So I sent out a memo that I'm assuming that you've received. The first thing we need to be aware of is churches and ownership. It is not a land use. So that should have no bearing. This is a camp. If you allow one camp, you may be required to allow other more commercial camps, because you can't recognize that use individually. You do, and I put in here, as you know, you have to identify what use that you're comparing that this is similar to in the allowable uses. There's a couple things that really concern me about code. So, one, you've obviously disturbed over an acre of land. That requires a permit of the state of Tennessee through TDEC. You would have to obtain a SWIP permit, which is Stormwater Prevention Plan permit. And from the pictures, it does not look like you have done any kind of attempt at securing the site with regard to off-site impact. And the state will, they not only will fine you, but you have to go through their process. Also, with regard to wells, you also have to go to TDEC to get a permit for a well. As far as if this is considered transient habitation, you don't have that defined in your zoning ordinance. So I would caution you about using that. First of all, you would have to define it and then regulate it and establish performance criteria. Transient habitation kicks in a group assembly as per the state of Tennessee. So at that point, the building not only has to be inspected by the state of Tennessee, it has to be sprinkled. Those are heavy-duty minimum requirements. And if the county is not observing them, I'm concerned that not only they're going to get in trouble, but your state department doesn't look favorably when the local government or jurisdiction does not, at least is not aware of their procedures, their regulations, and enact them when it's required. So you have a failure to obtain a SWIP permit, you have a failure to get a well permit. This would be group assembly. Even if you determine that the camp is allowed, that is still group assembly and would have to be inspected by the state of Tennessee, meet their fire codes, and be fully sprinkled. To fuel a sprinkler system, you have to have adequate pressure and volume. If you can get that off a well, you're probably looking at heavy-duty pumps. I don't know that that's feasible. So with, those, I mean, these are big criteria and big, violations, that I think the, BZA should take into consideration. Cause these are, if there isn't one out there and you've never allowed that, these are huge precedents to set for, any kind of approval or consideration, either in a conditional use or rezoning. So I would just caution you.
Yeah, I was just, first off, I want to make very clear, we do not, our intentions was never to violate any codes where we were, like I said, very transparent with this whole department the entire time while bearing these things. Is like I said, we want to do things the right way. And yeah, if we need to put sprinkler systems, we have built multiple cabins that have sprinkler systems off of wells, so we don't see that being a big problem. So if that's what we need to do, then we're more than happy to do that. You know, that we want to convey that whatever you guys say, listen, this is the direction you guys have to do, this is what you have to do, we'll submit to that. You know,
There is a possibility. It's
like I
not
said,
possible, you said no, but it's a possible, we can do what we need to do.
Do you have anything else, Madam Mayor?
No, sir, I think that's pretty well enough.
And would you mind to compile that list of the stuff that they need to get, so we can pass that along to them, that way they can be working on that? Okay, thank you. 1 second, Terry's got something he wants to say.
I was just gonna say is that basically we need to take, even though we've given them advice, we need to take action on what's here.
Absolutely,
Yeah, so
absolutely.
You answered that question, so.
So, Tim, can we get the stuff that they need, the list to them that they need to be addressing? Stuff to make it
Mostly it's from the state.
from the state
She's
level.
talking about,
Yeah, just give them some direction. on how to get
Tom
on that.
probably knows more about that. than
Okay.
anybody.
So get with those guys, they'll get what you need to put together to move forward on this thing. Now, we're gonna address the item on the agenda, since we've given them direction, and it is to determine if a church-related camp is allowed in A1.
Don't say church.
I'm just reading what's on the agenda, man. A church or any other camp is allowed in A1, but we're gonna go for what's on the agenda tonight. So what is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion that, based upon this, that a related camp is not an allowed use in an A1 zone based upon what is shown in our zoning ordinance for A1. If they need a recommendation, my recommendation would be to RR for rural residential.
Okay, we have a proper motion on the floor with a recommendation tied to it. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
That proper motion and second. Is there any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor of passing the motion, let it be known by saying aye. All those opposed, motion passes. Thank you, guys. Okay, next item on the agenda is item number 7. Variance for a garage to be placed in front of the house at 430 Barry Cove in Dandridge, Jenkins Farm, Lot 67, by Mike and Pam Lane. Are they here?
You all have some drawings in your packet, and then here's a couple of pictures, or 3 pictures that.
Okay. This is the one to cul-de-sac.
They got one of those lots down there on the Jenkins farm that, I don't know where else they could ever build anything. It's gotta be in front of their house down there. They're at the end of the cul-de-sac. And, their house is way back at the end of the lot. And there's no place to build anything unless it's in front. And they will be 30 feet from the cul-de-sac, right? From the
Yes,
road? Yeah.
right now, the present footprint is 33 feet.
What is the height of that garage going to be?
There's 12-foot garage doors, so the ceiling's 14 feet, and then just the peaks. I don't know, I have an estimate of it.
The 14-foot sidewalls, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what is the distance? I noticed that on this drawing that we have here, what is the distance of the garage from the power
10.5 feet.
Okay, have you spoken with the utility company to ask them if,
The contractor that I had out looking at laying it out and everything, he said the requirement's 10 feet, so we moved it 10.5 just to be sure.
okay. Okay, I might want to follow up on that, just as some information for you. You may want to double check that.
We will. We haven't moved forward until we get your blessing.
Right. Does anybody else on the board have any questions for him? Yes, sir, Terry.
It's just that, I just feel like we need a survey for these. I guess the reason being is that, well, even though we're granting this variance, per se, for future reference, it would be helpful if there was a survey there showing exactly where it's at with all the proper dimensions and everything is there. I mean, we can see this right here, but that doesn't really help us a lot for in the future. Knowing that this variance was granted and that this structure was built based upon the dimensions that were shown here, I really prefer, I just like seeing a surveyor put that on paper.
Yeah, the west, where the west line of it is, that's the telephone pole. That line is exactly on the survey stakes that are in the ground.
I understand that, sir. But typically a surveyor would provide this plat for us. That's my 2 cents worth. I don't know what the board may feel comfortable with this in the form that it's in, so. Yeah, that's the plat, yes.
Yeah, is that,
So.
Does anyone else have any questions for him? I'm in agreement with Terry. I would like to see a drawing done on the exact location, footage-wise, by a surveyor and stuff for that, and that's my opinion on things. No further questions? What's the pleasure of the board? Oh, you don't have to leave yet. We're getting ready to vote on. Sorry. What is the pleasure of the board, guys? How'd y'all like to do?
We're gonna postpone it until we get a.
Yeah, that's, I mean,
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we postpone it until we see a survey drawing.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of postponing the variance request until a proper survey is brought from a surveyor, let me know by saying aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. Get that drawing for us and bring it back if you would, please.
okay.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda will be item 8, a variance for a garage to be placed in front of the house at 851 Nash Road, Newmarket. That'd be in Sherman Oaks, lot number 29 by Sheldon and Casey White. Are they here?
This is sort of the same deal. Jefferson subdivision.
Uh-oh. You wanna look at those?
I've got-
You got a copy of them? Okay. Nice one, too. Okay, what would you like to say on your behalf, sir?
On my behalf.
Yeah.
So if we could place it behind our property. There's a couple different routes to go. There is I think about a quarter of our acre is reserve land for future septic, from what I understand. And then the center of our property dips, and that acts as a water drainage. And so from not being able to use about a quarter of our acre from where our house is right now, that's kind of the only place we can find that would be suitable for a garage, because it places us above the drainage point and it places us opposite of the reserve land.
Okay.
So-
And this,
I'm so sorry.
oh, you're fine. This one's kind of like the one we just looked at, as far as having the proper survey with that and with the footage and marks, setbacks in place. Does anyone have any questions for him while I'm looking?
Mr. White, I think you do, in this case, probably have a reason for a variance, just based upon topography and where your field line is located as far as your garage. What worries me is that are you gonna need more than just that one variance? Because basically here, I'm assuming that there's probably a 30-foot setback in here along Nance Road, and I'm not sure the way that you've got this drawn in here that that's gonna meet that. That's why I usually like to have a surveyor in there, because that way it's protecting you and it protects us as well. And then, but I think that based on what you've shown here, especially with your soils and where your septic lays, you know, it very well could be that that may qualify you for a variance just due to topography and issues like that. But also, I think it needs to protect you and us as well, is that where the proposed garage is actually gonna go, that a surveyor staked it out there, showing that you're gonna be within the 30-foot setback on the front and the sides, per se. And if not, will you need other variances besides the one for the, just the location because of where your existing septic and reserve area is? So.
Absolutely. May I speak real fast?
Pardon me, sir.
I was wondering, so I do have a staked picture. I came prepared with images, but it is not from a surveyor. It's 34 feet set off of Nance Road and 12 feet set off of our property line right now. I've staked in a rough estimate, and based off of those guidelines, I would fall into pretty good category for a variance.
Okay, I still think that we need that from a surveyor showing where it's at there. I know a lot of people look at that as a hindrance, but I think it protects, it just provides protection, okay?
Perfect.
So, that's my vote.
Yeah. Anybody else have anything else? If you'd be willing to get that for us, we'll look at postponing this till you come back with that,
Awesome.
if we can get a motion. Okay. Do we have what would be the pleasure of the board in this matter?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we would roll this and not grant the variance until we have a proper survey showing the exact location of the garage and the house in relation to the building setbacks of the lot.
Do we have a proper motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. Get that to us. Give them the next one.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Okay, we are to item 9. Variance on a side setback for a new garage that has been constructed at 113 Raspberry Drive in Newmarket, Berry Ridge, Lot 99, by David and Ashley Tharp.
This one is different, it's already built. And, yes, the neighbor called in.
I'm not sure who called in. My neighbor that's right beside me said nothing to me about it. I've spoke to her since it's been built, and she loves it, so I'm granting that it's not her. But there is a guy that lives up the hill above me that may have. Before it was constructed, my wife and I looked online, and it said carports do not require a permit. I would have came in and got everything taken care of if I knew that. And on all my paperwork, it says carport that I was purchasing. And when I came in and talked to Cassie and Stephanie, Carrie, she said that anything that's fully enclosed in Jeff County or Jeff City is considered a garage. And I didn't know that going off because it could be built on dirt or concrete, either or, and it can be taken down and moved. But in my yard where I placed it, there's no other place to really put it because I got a pool here and then there's a big hill on the one side for water runoff.
Yeah, that's true on that.
And
But that's not a carport, is it?
It is a carport. I've got the paperwork and I sent it to Carrie.
Okay. Come on, now. Got a garage door on it, right?
Yeah, but it says here enclosed carport on all the paperwork that I received from them.
Yeah, oh yeah, opens out. It's been done.
But I wasn't trying to skip anything. I was going off the line.
He needs to be 7 feet from the property line. That's R1 down there.
Is that what it's on?
Yeah, it's R1. As you can see in one of those pictures, he's 3 or 4 feet off from being 7.
And that's for a garage, correct? Dan?
Well, yeah, I mean,
That's for a
yeah,
garage.
that's what I would call it, but,
Yeah.
and I guess Kerry wouldn't give him a permit, why?
She wouldn't give it until y'all granted where I wasn't 7 foot. Because I was good everywhere except for that one.
That side, yeah.
Yes, sir.
So you're asking for more or less a 3-foot variance from
Yes,
that
sir.
side property line?
On that side. And realistically, and where I'm from, all the buildings I've ever grown up around, they're right there against the back of the property line or on the property line. And I figured since it was on the inside of my fence that I should have came in and talked to somebody, I'm assuming.
I understand. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or
So if it'd been a carport, how far off would you need?
7 feet.
7 feet?
Either way, you would need to be 7.
I think maybe, Rob would, I don't know if he even specs of it or not.
There's no power in it. There's just literally just.
Just shell.
If it wasn't enclosed, you wouldn't even have to get a permit. It still needs to be 7 feet off.
So if it's enclosed, it's not a carport.
Well, technically, when you look at, in the building codes, when you're looking at that, as far as it goes, there are different things, that classifications for carports. I'm not sure if it's in our definitions or not, the difference between a garage and a carport. Okay? Because they can be attached and they can be detached as accessory buildings.
If the doors wasn't on it, it could be a,
Well,
yeah, that's,
Mr. Stark, the other thing is that, as we said before, it really helps if we have a survey on this, to know exactly what we're granting as far as that goes.
I
And
know
show
that the one stake is where my neighbor had it surveyed when she built her fence in that one. So I mean,
Right, okay.
and I understand I need to get it surveyed as well.
Yeah, what we're looking at is that you're talking about the stakes that are on the ground. I'm talking about a property line in relation to the stakes and where the exact location of the building is. And, because if we grant a variance for that, we need to know exactly what we're granting right there. And here's the other thing is that you've got just a little bit of overhang on the building, which is also basically ends up being
and encroachment over the setback as well. So your surveyor would probably locate that and show that as well. So you know, you may need more variance than that, based on the overhang. So,
It's got a foot overhang, 6-inch overhang.
I'm not exactly sure. I could probably read it right
It's
here
about 6
and
inches,
tell me,
about 6 inches.
but I know
We're looking at it for,
it's like 30, I think it's 30 inches off my fence, so.
yeah,
would you be willing to get the survey for us and bring that back to us?
Sir, I'm willing to do anything to try to keep it where it's at, because I have nowhere else to put it.
You got much choice, you can tear it down or.
Yeah.
well, that may be the case, okay? You know, we may, and that may be justifiable, based on the location and everything else. But, I still think that we need to be precise on that, okay?
If you would get that survey, get that bring back to us and let us,
My company has his own surveyor. If he puts his name on it, does that work? Or do you have a number of a surveyor that I can
Yeah, we do in the
Tim
office.
then.
do?
If he's licensed surveyor in the state of Tennessee, then.
Yeah, he is. I mean,
Then that's fine,
he does everything for my company.
that's fine, that's no problem.
And you just print out a sheet and have all of his documents, like I guess like a CAD file type deal
Well,
that he'll send to
it'll
you.
just be a plat, it can be on 8.5 by 11, or depending on how big your lot is, 11 by 17. What it's gonna do is that it's gonna give us an exact description
Yeah,
of,
you're not
What you're asking
recording it or anything.
Well, I was just didn't know if I could maybe send like an email to zoning of like a CAD file of my lot.
It worked.
well, you can't send a CAD file, you can't open a CAD file. It'd have to be in a PDF, which, that's
PDF?
fine. He can make that into a.
Yeah, he can.
Yeah, you can do that.
Excellent. And I'll get that as soon as possible. And will I need to, I guess, show up at the next board meeting next month?
Yeah, you just go back to
Go
Tim,
back to Tim.
and when you get that, he'll get you back on the agenda.
Okay.
so we'll still need to vote on this and move forward. So what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I vote to roll this and deny the variance on the side setback for the new garage until we actually have a survey showing the exact and precise location and how much variance would actually need to be granted if granted.
Okay, we have proper motion. Do we have a second? Proper motion second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, let me know by saying aye. All those opposed, motion passes. I'll be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion, have a second? Have a second? Okay, motion second. All those in favor of adjourning, let me know by saying aye. Aye. Meeting is adjourned. At this time, I'll call to order the meeting of the Jefferson County Planning Commission. Again, I trust you had your packets and had a chance to look at the minutes. Do we have any corrections to those? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve. Have a proper motion. Do I have a second? Second. All those in favor, let me know by saying aye. Opposed, motion passes. Citizens input. Yes, sir. Got some more coming in. Okay. Mr. Mike Asbury. Mike with us?
Mike Asbury, 1122 West Dumpling Valley Road. Good evening to you all. I know that some months ago we got the results in from your citizen survey. I was wondering if we're doing any action on that. Just a question you can send me later or whatever. The other thing I wanted to comment on is you sort of took it off the meeting agenda, but you were going to do something with the zoning resolutions to do I-3. Well, I was wondering about some other things. You know, they're in the general provisions of our zoning resolution. We don't address nuisance of activities on one property or another. You know, light trespass, noise, dust, trespass on the property, smell. You know, if you're gonna have a cadaver place where you're letting things decompose, that might not be too good. Another item that's not really addressed in our zoning resolution is we don't seem to have any real enforcement ability in there. It's like, you know, I've heard complaints about the people talking about their campground and all the people coming onto their property and doing things they shouldn't be doing, and we don't seem to be able to get that stopped for whatever reason, whether y'all have, there's regulations on that or what, but we need to get some teeth or whatever so Tim can get out there and stop them, or however, whatever the means and methods for that is. Another thing I think is we have many uses are inappropriately zoned, like in A1, which is agricultural forestry. You know, you can do grocery stores, barber shops, churches, cemeteries, clubs, schools, you know, a big high school going in the middle, you know, and then, you know, games, arcades, golf courses. There's all kinds of things that are in there that would be more appropriate for commercial type stuff. And I think that needs to be looked at and the stuff pulled out of A1 and put in the right commercial type zoning. And the other thing, I know that having all this stuff in A1 probably saves a lot of time and money for people to avoid rezoning, but the rezoning process gives the neighborhoods, neighbors and the communities a heads up on what's about to happen to them. So I think that's a good thing. And they have the right to know that what's getting ready to go in. And he says there are many people who come to the county commission, BZA, planning commission, long-range planning, and others and give their input. I wish y'all would please listen to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Asbury.
Mr. Chairman, could I address this first question there? It's
We-
just the long-range planning. Just, there's a long-range planning.
He said we could get back with him on that at
Okay.
a later point in time. So if you don't mind, we'll hold off on that.
Okay.
Good work. Moving on down, citizens input. Last name of Lucier. Yes.
Sorry about my handwriting.
No worries, no worries. I just didn't want to mess it up on the first name, so I didn't try. I'm sorry. If you would state your full name and address.
Yeah, it's Greg Lusher, 1645 East Highway 2570 in Dandridge. And I'm here to chase down a rumor, actually, that an RV park was either approved or is in the process basically in my backyard. I saw something in the paper about a property for sale that's right next to me for $1.5 million with an approved RV park. And that piece of property surrounds me on two sides within 50 feet. And I've never, if this is the case, if it has been approved, I've never been notified. And what this gentleman just said about people being notified about zoning changes, that parcel is 50 feet on two sides of my house. So is there an RV park going in there?
I don't know where, unless you're talking about Messers, I don't think it, I don't know of another one, no.
No? Okay, not past Sherman Oaks?
Nobody's come to talk to me about it.
Not past Sherman Oaks?
Do what?
Sherman Oaks Campground on 2570 out past Swans.
Jeremy's got one up there, yeah.
Okay.
If that's one you're talking about?
I know there's one already down in there.
Yeah.
There's another empty
No,
parcel.
There's been nobody else.
There's been nobody there.
No, sir. Nobody
Okay.
come to us.
Can somebody check on that address, 1645?
I think there was a guy, gentleman, if it's before you get to Mr. Messers, on the right. You know where Mr. Messers is, on the right. What's your address?
1645.
16 what?
Okay, now, so, would it be before it gets to you?
What'd you say the address was?
1645. I'm in the little white house, the big white garage.
He's across from TC Diesel, I think.
Yeah,
Across from who?
the diesel place.
Oh, no, no,
No,
no.
he put.
No, no, I know he is. No, I'm talking about the other side.
Well, there was, at one time, some guy
How
came
come see
in,
me?
wanting to put a campground in, but
Okay.
never did come back.
Okay,
So you got people that will say they got things approved when they don't have it.
all right,
So
Yeah, he's done
that's
it.
when I tell buyer beware.
okay. And I don't know if this is the appropriate forum for it, but can I ask if there is a possibility at some point that something like that could be approved for that piece of property? Because you have the RV park, or do you have the, you do? Okay, on past me. Yeah. So obviously, there's precedent set for that,
It's
so
allowed use in A1. Yes, sir.
an RV park is allowed in an agricultural zone.
The only place we put them.
Okay. I guess I'm kind of tagging on to this guy then, that an agricultural use, to me, an RV park doesn't belong. You know, I'm not part of this. I know you guys got a tough job to do. But, you know, to ever think that I could live in a residential zone property, which is what my property tax statement says, and to have an RV park go in my backyard within 50 feet of me, that's not right. Okay. Appreciate it. Appreciate the
Thank you,
time.
sir.
Can I ask one more question?
Absolutely.
If something like that was going to happen, is there a notification process for the residents around that area?
Yes.
Would I have been
Yeah.
notified?
It's in the paper.
It's in the newspaper.
Yes, it always is. We don't notify anybody, there's no signs or anything unless it's a rezone.
Unless it's a rezoning.
Unless they want to change something, that's the way it's always been 26.
Okay. So according to the gentleman before me, there's a ton of things that could go into there under agricultural.
Sure are.
Okay. All right, appreciate you.
Is there a Kyle Birdsville here?
How we doing today, everybody? My name's Kyle Birdsell. I'm at 1661 East Highway 2570, and I'm here about the Lakeside Getaway Campground. I have a question first. Is he still in business? Does he still obtain a business
We're
license?
going to talk about that to the end of the agenda.
Okay, do I need to wait till then?
You can.
Okay, can I talk about a site plan here?
I would wait until the end of it.
All right, cool. If you want to wait and we'll have all one big talk, I'm all okay for that.
Do we have a Jason Messer with us tonight?
Yes, sir. He'll talk at the end.
He'll talk at the end too? And then, Katie Huffaker.
Hi, I know most of you. I'm Katie Huffaker. I'm a county commissioner, and I'm vice chair of the long-range planning. Jim Snodgrass is the chair of the long-range planning, but he's off the grid, and I can't text him because he has no signal. And I think he was gonna reach out to you, Brian, and the planner about our long-range committee meeting, but I don't know if he did or not, so I'm here in person just to let you know.
Hadn't heard yet, and just to keep things on track, what's your address, Katie?
2082 Oak Grove Road, Dandridge, Tennessee.
Thank you very
So
much,
I'm
ma'am.
in District 1, and I represent District 1 from the County Commission. But we have a long-range planning meeting this Thursday in this courtroom at 8:30 a.m., and I would like to invite any of you who might be interested in coming. We'll be discussing the community input survey and how to proceed. A lot of it has to do with zoning. So I just want to invite you all if you're interested. As I sat there through the BZA, I have a question though. If you give a variance where encroachment's closer to the neighbor than allowed in our regulations, do you get approval from the neighbor in like a certified letter form that they're okay with the variance? Just a question. So, thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Okay, that takes care of the citizens' input. Moving on to new business. Item A, revised site plan review for commercial storage facility to be located at 1980 East Highway 2570, Dandridge, by Robert Delventhal.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. So I have an approved site plan for this project, and I'm resubmitting. There's really no changes to setbacks or sizes, but I'm resubmitting so we can build in phases, so they don't have to build, you know, the whole building at one time. So I was told I had to resubmit.
And I didn't know what he draws that you all would want to approve that. And I called him today to tell him, but he wanted to come and plead his case anyway.
You wanna get that, you wanna see that stamped? Yeah.
I'm a no on this.
Okay, that's no problem. So, back to the civil engineer and get it redrawn and resubmit. Gotcha, okay. I was kinda told that was gonna happen.
Yep, so, John, did you say you made that for a motion?
Yeah.
Okay. That
Would
was,
you repeat the motion, please?
I think
I
you
will second that.
Certified survey.
I'll second.
have proper motion and second. Do you have any further discussion? All those in favor of denying the request, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Very much. The next three items on the agenda have been withdrawn or stricken, and we are to E, discussion of land use plan possible.
Mr. Chairman, you
Yes,
wanna
sir.
go ahead and do the campground deal now, before you get into that discussion? That'd be fine.
Be fine with me, so
Do we need to have it on the agenda?
Well, it was, I guess it's other businesses.
the other they both may get lengthy, but, if it doesn't displease anybody on the board, we can add that there and go ahead and take care of that. The
Discussion of the
discussion,
lakeside
yeah, the campground, before we do other business and the land use. Okay, so we have, who wants to speak?
I know some of the commissioners have seen these, but we have, pictures that.
Do. Put a stop to it.
Weren't able to see these.
Okay. I'll tell you, but, hold up just a minute. We've had a little bit of a talk here amongst the board. We've never accepted anything like this that wasn't on the agenda.
No.
Or on the, on that stuff there, okay. I'm sorry. You're at peace with the agenda and adding this too?
Yeah.
Okay.
I explained it to him, but he wanted to plead his case.
Okay, fair enough.
I
Fair
just
enough.
wanted to make sure with
Yeah, I
Lucille
knew
that he was telling
I tried.
everybody.
I tried.
Okay.
Okay. Go ahead, sir, sorry.
Awesome. I have a site plan here for a lakeside getaway campground. None of these are signed from the health department, from human resource, from the EPA. That's my first question, how a permit got approved without any of those signatures on there.
I think the architect signed it, or
The architect did sign it, Simbab Huwei.
so you don't record site plans, so they're not required any other.
You're not, okay.
You don't
Okay.
have to record.
You don't have to record site plans, so when everybody approves, no recording?
Once the planning commission approves it, that's it.
Okay. All right, first of all, the site plan that he submitted is highly inaccurate. The 1002 line and the 1007 line are off by at least 300 feet. That's my first one. So that puts all the first 10 spots in his campground in the FEMA floodplain. That's a bit concerning for me. I live on the lake and I've seen the lake do what it does, and it is a very unforgiving beast. I just don't want him blatantly putting people in that path. Number two, all the septic and sewer, none of it is in. We have seen over 250 people on his property for an entire day. Where did they go to the bathroom? That's another concerning, because it ended up landing on my property a few times. His fence issue, there's not even a fence or a buffer or anything in this site plan. There's nothing that is protecting the public from his business.
There's a buffer of trees on that site plan.
That he does not own.
No, it shows it on there. I mean,
We have that site plan as well, and it shows trees going all the way up the property line that are not even there. The trees that are there are not even on his property. I was one of the people living there when the guy before him tore down all the woods. And I sat there and walked with that guy and made sure that he didn't have a single tree left on his property. So that puts his property line right on the other side of this tree. And what's right on the other side of this tree? His bathhouse. There is no setback for this bathhouse. It is within feet of the property line. We have went down and found all the pins and done everything we need to do to confirm this. Another thing, this is a highly residential area. I'm in agricultural zoning. There's properties 100 feet apart. All of our properties are 142 feet exactly How did a commercial, which I consider should be a commercial, campground land in the middle of a residential plot? I would like some answers on this situation and to see what this board can do for the future for our county. I highly believe in protecting our citizens and accurate site plans. I live off of blueprints and site plans for my job. If I don't do them right and I tear down an entire wall that's not supposed to be tore down, that's on me. I have to fix that. I hope you guys take some responsibility for this issue.
Thank you.
Is there somebody else here?
There's Jeremy, was Jason, sorry.
Jason, I don't know why I keep coming. Sorry about that, Jason.
Do you guys have the site plan? Do you need the site plan?
Well, they might want to see it. I don't think we give it, you didn't give them.
So we spent 4 months back last year, starting in August of 2023. I came in with a hand-drawn site plan,
Do what now?
and you guys told me I had to have an architectural drawn site plan, if you remember. So I brought back an architectural site plan, okay? We are still in the building phase. You guys can pass this around, it's a big one, so I apologize for the size of it. But we are still in the building phase of this project. Granted, primitive tent camping is allowed in the county, correct? There's no zoning against primitive tent camping, okay, or primitive camping in general. So I don't know what they would rather have, an RV park that's going to be nice that I'm still building out, or 100 tent sites in their neighboring properties. Because that's the option that I have, is to put tent sites all over this property. There's no zoning against it. And we've been in business for right at a year, okay? I've got pages and pages of reviews from customers that have enjoyed this space, that go in there and say that we don't allow no nonsense, we don't allow alcohol, we don't allow drugs on our property. We will and are working on the buffer. Again, we're still in the building phases. We are working with Tom on environmental for the sewer for the RV park. Granted, we put a sewer in last year for the bathhouse. It's already been put in, it's already done, it's already approved, certified, and well, I've got pictures of the bathhouse if you want to see that. They keep saying I don't have a bathhouse. I have receipts last year when I opened the tent part of the campground for a porta potty that I paid for 6 months until we got the sewer put in. So we've always had a bathroom available for the guests. I don't know, I live on the property, so they've made statements that they feel unsafe. Let me just read you a little bit about myself. I have over 20 years experience in residential and commercial construction and have been project manager of a multi-million-dollar projects in East Tennessee. I've served 17 years in healthcare, and I've volunteered in ministry investing in people in my community 27 years. I most recently served 5 years as a local director of security. I have years of training in verbal conflict, hand-to-hand combat weapons, tactical procedures, safety, and security procedures. I recently retired and resigned from those positions to build a future of this project for my family, okay? My family and I have invested over 15,000 man-hours in this project in the last 2 years. Once we got the site plan approved in November, then I turned that site plan into TVA, okay? TVA took 6 months, granted, and thousands of dollars to approve the site plan and approve the permits. All this has been approved through TVA. All the elevations have been confirmed. A licensed surveyor set all the elevation pins. I don't know where he's getting his information. I guess he's trespassing on my property without my knowledge to get that. But his information is incorrect. We've invested thousands upon hundreds of thousands of dollars into this property already. We are 1 year in business, and we are planning on investing another
$500,000 in this property to finish it. You're looking at another piece of real estate in this county similar to Anchors Down when it's done. Okay? So it's not just some fly-by-night place where people's going to be living in there. One, it's an RV park. They're coming in for 1, 2 nights, 3 nights, maybe a week, and then they're leaving. They're looking for a place to park for a night and get some rest that's safe. They're coming off of the interstate. And I will grant you this. Every booking that we do is run through a background check. I gave you my background to let you know that I'm not just some redneck trying to put something in to gain a bunch of money. My family lives on this property. There's only one way in and one way out. They have to pass by my home that I built this winter on the property to get to the campground. They have to pass back by the house to get out. The property is gated. I can close the gate, open the gate as needed. So it's not just something that's trying to cause a problem for neighbors. You know, I'm a licensed armed guard in the state of Tennessee. I live on the property. I have tons of experience with issues. We don't have issues. We've had 2 circumstances. One of them when some young adults came in and brought alcohol in. They got blacklisted and kicked out. Another instance is a similar thing. So we've had hundreds of guests. We've had 2 issues that I know of. When we first opened about a year ago, Kyle called me. It's the last time I spoke to Kyle. Okay, he called me and said, "We got a problem." He said, "Somebody down there at your campground was peeing in the edge of the woods." I said, "Okay." I'm like, "Okay, what am I supposed to do about that?" And he's like, "Well, it needs to be addressed." He said, "Do you not have a bathroom over?" I said, "Yes, I have a porta potty." At that time, I had a porta potty. So I went down and I talked to the guy and I said, "Sir, can you make sure you please use the bathroom? Don't be peeing in the woods. We have guests around. We have families. We have other neighbors." I went and addressed it. That's the last time I spoke to Kyle that I can remember. I don't know what else to say other than I can read you what I brought to bring. I just recently put in 300 feet of fencing on the area that has no buffer that I wasn't necessarily required to do, the fencing. I could have planted trees 6 inches tall, a foot tall, 2 foot tall, whatever along that property line. And it would have took them years to grow. But instead I went in and I spent $6,000 out of my pocket, out of the great goodness of my heart, upon the recommendation of the county to build the fence. That was the area that was, and they don't even live, mind you, this is down by the lake. This isn't where their house is. Their house is back up the property, probably close to 1,000 feet from where I built the fence. So the campground in conjunction to where their house is a pretty good ways. And not only that, but the bathhouse setback for accessory buildings, I think is 5 feet in the regulations. I'm 22 feet off the property line.
Do we have any questions? Yes, sir. Brooks.
I've got some questions, but I think maybe it would be quicker if we just had the planner address. Do you have any comments on this situation? Are you up to speed on it?
I'm gonna give her an opportunity to talk. I was gonna see if anybody else had anything they wanted to say, and I was
just
gonna
thought
notify
maybe
her.
she'd talk and knock a bunch of questions out for all
They
of
have.
us.
I can answer all the questions about the septic.
Okay.
That was one of my questions, so.
Yeah.
He did a site plan, like I say, it's still an ongoing process. It's something that's not definite for how many sites he's going to do and everything else. He has the area approved for his 20 sites, say RV sites. He has a septic area for that. We are in the process of, he's putting lines in there, getting water lines in that we have to look at. You got electrical in on 5, is that right?
I have electric on 5 currently, yes.
5 right now.
Electric.
And the next step is, after you got that all in, as far as looking at where we're gonna set the tanks, to pump the system up to above the campground to an area that's been designated for the field lines. And so, he's got everything in order for what he's gonna do. Like I say, it's a process. And, he does have his bathroom up, because field lines in for it. It's all set back. His tanks, everything, it's all set back as far as TBA goes, or anything like that. So, because I made mistakes where the 1002 is, of course, you've got a site plan showing where it is. That's what we go by.
And Jason's also, working with the city of Dandridge,
Yeah.
Water department for the fire hydrant. He's gonna have to do a flow study, I think.
They have to do, let's come out and do a
before
flow
they'll
study.
Put one down there.
Yeah, they say there's a possibility they may not be able to support a fire hydrant for that at 20
So he has
gallons.
to do a study before they'll tell him yes or no on the fire hydrant.
I've discussed with you that if that's the case, you're all requiring a fire hydrant, I might overstep my boundaries, but I told him you might want to talk to the fire department on this. He's got capabilities of putting enough holding capacity water down there for what, 2 or 3 tankers would come in, and then, of course, the lake's there. So he would have more water, and another question is, how much of a fire can you have with seasonal campground? But, he can have more capacity when a fire truck pulls up on that property than what they're gonna be bringing with Dandridge and White Pine combined, and the way to pump it out. Without, possibly using a fire hydrant if he doesn't have the volume for a fire hydrant. That was something that was discussed, maybe to look at. As far as, if you can't get to the requirement for a fire hydrant, what you're all saying, maybe you can do some kind of holding capacity.
I think the regulations state if the fire hydrant can't be put in, then that's just a waived.
Yeah, they get a letter from the water department saying, and y'all have always in the past.
So that's something he brought up,
Well, I mean, they can draft water out of the lake too. I have a boat ramp that's 65 feet long and holds water from April to the end of September. So generally, depending on the season. But they can draft water straight off the ramp, pull water out of the lake. All they gotta do is throw a hose out and the pump can pump the water out of the lake. And the fire department has approval to do that. They can pull water wherever they need to put out a fire. I mean, that's a whole nother moot point. We're in building phases still, so that's regardless right now, irrelevant in a sense. Other than that they've stated that I don't have a fire hydrant.
Okay. John?
Got a question that, Storm brought it up. Gentleman back here says that it's not right on the 1002. Your letter says that TVA's give you a permit.
Correct.
TVA has, that's
Yeah.
what I wanna make sure.
I have the permit if you want to see it.
TVA has permitted you for whatever you are, whatever.
That exact site plan.
They have to.
And that's what I'm asking. I wanna know if that's clear, if there's any cloudy area, or somebody's made a mistake on what they spoke of.
No, that's
So
clear.
if TVA's done it, there ain't nothing we can do as far as what we're doing. TVA owns that, right?
Yeah, they
I
the
just
captain
wanna
on
know
that.
for positive show.
Yes, sir, Terry.
Mr. Chairman, I'm really confused. What are we discussing?
I agree.
I mean, I don't
I am too.
understand. If there was an error in the site plan, then I understand that. If there was no error in the site plan, then I don't understand why we're having a discussion here. And I guess the reason being is that once we approve a site plan, as far as that goes, okay, the actual construction and everything's there, because we don't have an as-built that comes back before us to see it, from that standpoint. So once it leaves us, as far as that goes, we have no police powers to go out there to enforce this, as far as it goes. So I guess what I don't understand is what are we reviewing?
Well, wouldn't that just nullify having a site
Let me
plan?
just say this, what you're reviewing, there will be an as built on the septic.
On the septic, okay?
Yeah, so therefore, if there's any questions about it being not compliant with 1002 or anything else, that would be addressed.
But we don't go out and verify that what's supposed to be built is built.
Then why have a site plan at all?
We have a site plan because that's the plan that they have to go by, they're supposed to go by under construction, okay? If they don't do that, it's not up to us to tell them that, okay, as far as that goes, because that's not our job. We don't.
Whose job is it?
It's whoever the county decides to do it, but they've never addressed that issue. Never ever has
Although
it
I've
been.
been up there several times.
Because unless you have an as-built, if you do a subdivision, we're they're gonna do one thing, we're gonna make you put all the improvements in, and we're gonna make you put up a performance bond. We don't require that on site plans from that standpoint, okay? And the other thing is that even though it is an ongoing construction, as far as that goes, which it can be, to a certain extent, if he's only doing primitive camping,
what extent?
has he violated anything by doing that?
There's no regs on primitive camping.
Okay.
You all should know.
Okay.
Wasn't we gonna put in regulations and somebody came before us and wanted to tamp that down and they wanted less regulation and they want us to water the campground regulations down?
Yeah, it
Who-
was,
what-
David Seal at the time was a county commissioner. He spoke back in 2016. He thought our campground regs were too stringent, but of course we did more than, he didn't want them to build bad houses and he thought it was too costly. But, thank God we didn't listen to that, but,
I thought that we had
But
talked
we-
about primitive, but we never put anything
primitive
in.
never, has always been exempt.
Okay.
You don't even have to have a site plan for primitive in this county.
So that brings me back to my point. What are we addressing here?
Well, the point is, I've been beat over the head by, I forget his name.
Kyle.
At Kyle at every meeting, and so I wanted, he insisted you all hear this, so I told him, I told Jason to come, him to come.
If there was a discrepancy in the site plan, if there's a discrepancy in the site plan and there's an error there, and they bring us proof of that, then this could be null and void, okay, until it's corrected. But,
I don't see any errors.
well, I mean, you're saying there's errors, but
When I see the site plan, I'll be more than happy to show you a couple.
well,
Mr. Chairman, when we hear from our planner,
I mean,
are you up to speed on any of this? Have you been out there?
She wasn't here when you passed it.
I'm not gonna speak out of turn. Don't let it go too far. Madam Planner, if you would like to share your input on this. I see that some of the stuff you want to talk about has never been maybe checked off, so.
Oh, as far as this goes, well, first of all, you do allow RV parks in the A1 district. It's listed as an allowable use. That being said, you do have the requirement, you've got performance criteria that must be addressed in a site plan approved by the planning commission. The primitive camping, I don't see a lot of difference between primitive and RVs. It's the same activity. It's transient habitation on your property. But that is a clear statement in here, is that property used for primitive camping is exempt from these regulations. I will say that knowing that you were going to do an RV park and presenting the site plan and getting it approved, and then although you haven't done it, and I realize that you're facing it in, which is acceptable, but by bringing the tents on site in the interim, you've kind of.
That was done up front, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. It was done up front and it was brought to you guys in the beginning.
And you're allowed to do that, but it does appear to circumvent the process a little bit.
I want to ask, if it's allowable, how are we circumventing?
Well, in that there was, I think just by presenting the site plan and getting it approved, there was an assumption that that would be on the ground, and it's not. But you're right, it's allowable in the zone district, and it's allowable as far as primitive camping. But as far as, so those are much bigger questions of where should they be allowed and what are the performance criteria. And it sounds like you've considered including primitive camping in those regulations, but haven't done so. So I think technically you're right. You've got a site plan, it's allowable in the zone district. As far as implementation, he's going through the process.
Okay, thank you.
But I do think you've got some bigger issues. It sounds like, but they're not to be addressed tonight or in this forum even.
Well, let me ask you this then, and I guess I'm like Terry, if all of the things are checked off, if all of the things are followed, and he's bought the property, it's allowable in that thing, it's primitive camping is exempt, if that's taken place and he's not built the pad yet, where's the violation?
There is none.
Okay, I'm just trying to clarify that in my head there.
And I guess the question is everybody comfortable that he's not in violation?
Well, that's what I'm asking you. You're the plan.
Based off what Terry said, there's no
You're the
point
plan.
in having a site plan, because he's saying we approve the site plan, then the property owner can go do whatever they want, and we have no recourse. That's what I got from what Terry was saying.
Unless if the county wants to adopt an as-built, in which case then you would have to have a surveyor come out there. Once the project is completed, survey, show the location of everything, and show that everything would be in place.
Well, but I will say there's another way, and oddly enough, I've put that in my memo to you tonight for discussion. But this is an issue that is on your agenda and you need to deal with.
No, this isn't on the agenda.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
it's.
Are you talking about a CO?
Mhm.
But what you don't understand is in Jefferson County, this is commercial property. We've not adopted
I
commercial
thought this
codes.
was agriculture.
It is a commercial project in an agricultural zone. We have that. Same as a grocery store, same as a convenience store, they're commercial. So I'm just saying is that Jefferson County has not adopted the commercial codes. So the inspector would not give a CO because he would not go out and do any inspections. So,
But you're talking about building code, not performance criteria in the zoning ordinance, and that's different.
okay, so you're saying the zoning officer would be the one that would do
Well,
this.
again, I think you need to deal with this issue and we can discuss that afterward.
So let me ask you this, what's the issue that we're dealing with if it's covered under what's written down right now? What issue are we dealing with?
I think you're dealing with citizen complaints, but I don't think you have any recourse.
Okay.
All right.
So,
With your current regulations,
and that's what
you
we
have no recourse.
That's what we have to operate under. Is
That
our
is
current
Operate under the
regulations.
rules we got right now, we
Okay.
can't change them and.
No, if you wanna put campgrounds in another zone, you need to do that and have county commission approve it.
Yeah, but it doesn't affect this
It
deal
doesn't affect
here,
this
is
one,
that
no.
correct?
This
Okay.
is,
You got
So
zero
what-
recourse right now.
Zero recourse, okay, that's what I wanted to get clear there, okay.
Do we have any further questions for this gentleman? Okay, thank you very much. Kyle, I'm gonna give you a chance to come back to the podium.
Thank you.
You've got 1 minute.
Awesome.
That's,
So,
and we've allowed too much on this because it's
I
not on the
understand.
agenda and there's nothing can be done.
First and foremost, he is not just a primitive campground. He's
Just
full.
right now.
I have RV pictures with power and water hooked up to
You
him.
did have one,
From
there's no
the-
water there. There is water. Oh, there is? I thought you said.
Sorry.
I didn't see.
For number one, he does have RVs there on a regular basis. We have pictures, we have proof, because we are literally 100 feet away from it on our property. He's not doing just primitive anymore. So how does he not have to follow these rules and regulations? Because nobody's been out there to see that he is not just primitive.
I have many times,
And you haven't seen an RV
but I
there?
don't work on the weekends.
I understand that. Well, I do. And I have 13 acres to tend to, but he is a full-on campground. I've seen people there. He has 5 sites. I've just continuously RVs with tents behind them. That doesn't make you just primitive at that point. You still got an RV there. That's a whole different set of guidelines. Am I right?
Kyle, I appreciate you stepping back and stating what you want to state. Terry, I'm gonna ask for advice from you on moving forward tonight, what needs to be done.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if there is anything.
Eventually, he's gonna have 20 RV sites.
He runs 5 continuously right now.
Yeah.
I live there.
So basically what you're saying is he's in violation of zoning. Because basically he doesn't have a finished site plan and what you're saying is.
Can I see those?
And he's in violation, correct? So he's saying he's in violation of the zoning because he hasn't completed his site plan.
And how can a business be open while under construction?
We've always allowed that.
We've always allowed that?
Yeah, we've always done that.
Okay, that's what I was making sure of. His bathhouses that he says he has septic and sewer and approved for, never been open.
Yeah, it is. Well, yesterday.
I'll agree with that, because I've been down there and seen it.
Okay,
I wanted to prove.
fair enough. I'm glad he opened it up and people are gonna stop using it on the ground. That makes me happy.
We're finished with this for tonight. There's nothing to rule on, there's nothing there's nothing to rule on.
Can we look at the site plan right here and I can show you it's wrong?
Does Stephanie, do you have this site plan in your office?
Let me ask you one question. This is going back to what I'm approving. He's saying everything I'm approving down there is not right. Where does he get off on being a surveyor and saying this guy's wrong when I'm taking a site plan and what TVA says is 1002? So I think this is all
I can
completely.
prove it, cold facts and plain. If you look right here,
Guys,
this
listen.
1002 line
Guys,
is on this
listen
side. On his actual property survey, it's
sir.
up here.
Anything about it.
That's what it sounds like.
And that'd be something that you would take up in Tim's office and with them.
He won't talk to us. We notified him before he even got his plan, and he never told me once to show up here.
Guys, I hate
You
that.
tell me why.
I hate to ask y'all to leave the room, but we're
I
stopping
think
this
that would
tonight.
be the best if I did.
Thank you.
Thank
much,
you,
sir.
everybody.
Thank you. We showed some grace allowing them to speak tonight. It wasn't on the agenda. And we've took a lot of people's time tonight listening to this, and there's nothing we can do tonight. There's nothing to vote on, there's nothing to do. We'll move on to next item on the agenda.
Item E.
It'd be item E, discussion of the land use plan, possible rezoning of Jefferson County, if there's time permitting.
So is this where you're suggesting we start?
I've only attended 2 meetings, so I have limited knowledge. This is my 3rd, but I find it interesting that the issues I suggested in here were the exact items that you have on the agenda tonight. Your land use plan is all important, but if you don't have the tools for implementation, it really doesn't matter a lot what your zoning ordinance says or your land use plan says. You approve a site plan, and it doesn't make it on the ground. What is the purpose of your site plan? And I mean that, what a great segue. So you have a site plan, you have a requirement for site plans. I noticed that your requirement, and you don't do any stormwater analysis, do you?
Just through Tom.
We require it, basically, and it's just for drainage on site. But as far as anything, as far as a grading plan or anything like that,
No.
we don't.
No, so you, in your site plan requirements, I think that could be massaged a little bit, especially, and it may be a consideration in even your subdivision regulations, because how often have you heard someone say, I never had water in my house or my yard until they built those houses up there?
Yeah.
And so stormwater is a big issue in a developing area, because if you don't address it now, it tends to accumulate and you will have problems. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. Surveyors can't deal with stormwater by state law. Architects aren't allowed to approve site plans. Architects seal construction drawings for buildings by state law. So engineers are typically the individuals who seal a site plan, and that's not addressed on there. But and those were just first cut things. You do have a requirement for site plan approval. It does come to this body. You do not have a certificate of occupancy, and that is not a certificate. So you said you don't have, your building codes are just residential? You've only adopted residential codes, okay. And I'm not trying to get you to adopt commercial codes, but when you're approving commercial uses in agricultural and residential zone districts, I would think that would be a consideration. A certificate of occupancy, however, in your zoning ordinance is a building official, code official, whoever is the county mayor's designee. Once you approve.
Budget, just so you know.
I think she's saying the county mayor can designate one of his employees.
Designate. So you've got an approved site plan. Before utilization of that site, someone should go out and look at it and certify that it's complied with the site plan, it's been approved by the appointed planning commission. You don't have that step. Usually that step is actually 3 steps. Permanent CO, a temporary CO, or a partial CO. If you're building in phases, which this gentleman mentioned that he was, you can do a certificate of occupancy for a phase. And that certifies that even in phase 1, you gotta have bathrooms, regardless of whether that's in the last phase or not. So there should be someone going out determining that they're in compliance with the approved site plan. And I think that is once again, if you can't ensure what is being approved on the comp plan or in your ordinances doesn't make it to being accurately represented on the ground, the validity of having it in the first place is questioned. I did and this just for discussion, but I did a typical certificate of occupancy. You would have to develop a permit for it. You would have to determine, or someone would have to determine who does the site inspection. I mean, it's not that it's difficult, and it's not that it requires the level of expertise that you do for building codes. And it's not an as-built either. It's just a visit to the site that the conditions of the planning commission approval have been met, that and this is the second thing, you don't have a grading permit.
Before you get on that, let me ask you a question
All right.
about the temporary occupancy
Permit.
permit. Can we take that and use that to stop these people from living in a camper forever in 3 days? Because they come in and they pull a building permit.
I still think Rob has the power for that, but he just ain't got the time.
They come in and pull a building permit, and 18 months later, they're still living in a camper that they throw the carport up over.
Yeah.
How do we handle that?
Well, that's, it's not that, it's apples and oranges for this. You only require site plans for non-residential uses. So if they're coming in and pulling a building permit, that building permit should expire at a point in time. And if they haven't, if they don't have an active building permit and yet they're residing on the property, I would consider that a violation of your code.
If that was a violation of code, could they get extension on the building permit?
They could apply for it.
Apply for it.
What they do in building right now is if you wanna live in a camper while you're building the house,
Right,
they allow you.
yeah, and what's the time frame?
Well, once you get the permit, it's good you get up.
No,
It takes you 10 years. but
typically, I thought it was.
Normally don't do
I don't
that.
want to count out, is it not a year?
No,
You have to start construction within
you have to
6
start
months.
within 6 months.
And then, in which
But
case, it
there's
is
no-
null and void.
Yeah,
But I thought,
but there's no time on finishing.
oh,
Not in the
that
county,
needs to
anyway.
change. Yeah.
But,
Needs to change just a little bit.
but that is a residential use, so
That's correct.
it's, once again, it's apple and orange.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you can always come back in, and once your permit is expired, you can always come back in, and there's usually a renewal process even that you can go through, for that.
And they do sometimes.
And there
do
may
that.
be may or may not be a fee associated with that.
So do you have a requirement, regarding permanent residency in an RV?
No, let me give you a little history
It-
on that.
Is it permitted or prohibited, either
For
one?
years and years, when I started in 90, of course, we started zoning in 98, and I started in 99, we didn't do a thing about campers. Forever and ever. If somebody asked you about a camper, my boss then, Robert Elwood, he allowed everything. I mean, you could put a camper anywhere. Up until the last, 5, 6 years, it's become a problem. But, and I even met with the mayor of 5 or 6 surrounding counties and being stationed on, they all got the same problem.
Oh, everybody has the same problem.
And
They
they
do.
don't know how to fix it, and we're in the same boat. They're everywhere.
But there are typically about 4 or 5 violations when that occurs, that's going on. If there's a house there and somebody's got a camper there and they're living in it, first of all, there's only one primary residence per parcel. So that's a zoning violation right there in itself. The other is, there was no permit, as far as that goes, for another residence, nor typically was there any kind of permit for septic or anything as far as that goes for it. So there's about 4 or 5 different violations when that occurs, some of them building, some of them zoning, in the county. And
we just ain't got the manpower.
Well, oddly
I'm not
enough, the
zoning
state
and Rob the only
legislature has
building.
changed, and they can now tax that RV as a residence, the tax assessor. So we might be able to tap into the tax
Good, yeah.
rolls and get Miss Susan to figure that out.
What would those be worth though?
Very little, but it's not about the worth, Austin, it's about finding out
Oh, I got you.
where they
Yeah.
are and who they are.
Gotcha.
And even in the RV parks that are permanent in nature, go at 3 o'clock and see how many kids get off the bus.
Oh, yeah, and that's why we got Campground Relics. We didn't
And-
have them, and that was the main reason, because they were living, and they still are, down here on 139, bus stop there, and also the druggies were hiding out in there. And they couldn't find them, with no addresses. And so that's how we come to get Campground Relics in this county. Before that, there's Wild Wild West. Did whatever.
Well, it sounds like from all the complaints that you've taken it to a point, and there are obviously that the point has some, like you quit before you finished, maybe, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but there's some, once you did something, the ramifications and the lack of enforcement is now obvious. And so zoning is the tool you would use to address it. And in residential zone districts, you probably need to adopt a proviso, even in your building code, that in the event that someone brings a camper on site and you issue a building permit for it, and do you require a septic permit to be in place prior to issuance of the building permit?
Yes.
So even though it's an RV, they have water and sewer?
They can't get the permit.
Okay. Well, that's.
No
that's-
sewer, but septic.
But they have to have septic. So that's kind of step one, but having periods of time that permit is active and expires. It sounds like it's in order. This is for non-residential, is the suggestions tonight.
What do the other counties do to pay for this? What fees do they have to where we can pay for a enforcement officer to get out here right around? Rob or Tim, either one, I mean, they can do something, but and Rob can't do much, but Tim, he's got plenty of time, he cut out a little baseball, he can go on and be all right.
Get that on camera.
But no, I'm just kidding. How do these other counties pay for that codes enforcement or the person to do? What fees do they set? What's the level of them?
To be honest, I don't know. I think that has been an issue both in Cobb County. I know it's a big issue in Claiborne County. It should be in, your permitting process, like when you get a building permit, there's a fee. When you get an occupancy permit, there's a fee.
You talked about that big development over in Claiborne County, the 3,000. How are they gonna handle that? I mean, what?
They don't have zoning.
I know.
Claiborne County does not have zoning.
So what will they do to handle?
The only thing that they will be administering there, as far as their regulations go, are their subdivision regulations. So they will be expected to extend all utilities, construct roads to county standards, and they will have to pay a building permit issuance. Now, the developer in that instance is extending sewer and increasing water. In fact, he's probably going to have to put a tank on, an elevated tank on site. Just have the fire pressure.
Do you have anybody you can reach out to that can say, hey, this is how we're doing it, that we've got these fees, or this is our fee structure to do that?
CTAS should have that information.
I've been told, I don't know if it's true, and I've not checked in on it, but I've been told Greene County has 4 zoning officers to keep the campers out, but they have guns and badges, and that's what's gonna have to happen here if we ever do that. I've got one, but
He just gets one.
I'll be shooting too many people if I have to go out and do it. But, that's what they do. They have 4 that actually, Greene County is a pretty good sized county, and they've got the same problem we do.
Everybody, at this
Everybody's got it.
point, everybody
Everybody's
in
got it.
the nation has the problem. It's not
Hamilton County-
just here.
Hamilton County started their crackdown.
They
They started, and they're getting pushed back, big time, because people say, well, you're violating my rights and everything else, and, it boils down to, say, you shouldn't be able to tell me what I should do with my property, and so the whole 9 yards, but they're just sticking to their guns, and so they're going after them, and, they're saying, if you're going to reside in an RV, then it's going to be in an RV park, and our RV parks are not long-term, they're short-term. That's what they're designed for. So Hamlin County's, they're starting to claim, they're going after their problem. And I think
I've spoken to their county mayor. Even in Anderson County, they have this problem, and they have an Anderson County park that has an RV component to it. And when they realized how bad it had gotten, the first thing they did was throw everybody out. And they went in and redid everything and made sure that it was a true campground. It's maximum 29 days of occupancy. they extended utilities to it, et cetera, et cetera. So they have done the same thing. And you're right, it is not an isolated incident. It's, especially for whatever reason, it has really proliferated in the last 5 years, I would say, in our rural areas in East Tennessee.
Now, we do tell them now, if they come in, Tom's office won't give them a septic permit and if they call and ask if they can live in the camper, we say no. But that don't mean there's some of them slipping out there. They don't care if they got sewer or not, or septic or not.
And if you find that
we catch
incident,
them. Of course, we do something about it, but
well, all you gotta do is call TDEC,
Big
give them
county.
the map group parcel number,
They
and
can
if
hard.
they're violating, safety and health standards, you know, the state of Tennessee will take care of it,
To an extent.
to an extent. And they're they're overworked as, you know, have volume
good luck getting
as well.
Yeah.
What zone is
I'm gonna get you.
hotels, motels, bed and breakfasts? What, is it a commercial?
Well, that's cities and hotels.
I know, but say it was, you wanted to do one in the county.
you'd
Well,
have
it could
to
be in
have
a
sewer.
commercial zone, and then I think in an RR, we allow hotels and motels in in a rural residential.
But not A1.
No.
No,
Well, looks like we could.
but it's,
You can do
But
bed and
you, and
breakfast
you need to
thing.
have sewer if you're doing a
Right.
hotel.
And
Motel.
a campground, I think, is just the same thing, just about as a bed and breakfast, hotel, and motel, because you're providing a place for people to stay
in a recreation vehicle.
in a recreation vehicle.
There's a lot of farms will have 4 or 5 lots, and it's agritourism. But it's 1 or 2 night stays. I mean, you can travel across the country and plan your trip with hookups at farms that have 4 or 5 lots sitting on them. It's out there, the information's there, and you can peg it. So there's all kind of ways to knife around whatever you try to put in place to get by.
It's like a
It's
holding water in a
it's-
dike.
It's a
It-
moving
you know, it just-
target
it
to
is.
reel it in. Austin, you had something you was going to say,
Mr.
sir.
Chairman, I had a question for Ms. Baldwin. So, getting back to the issue we face with the site plan. So this body approves the site plan, and then they don't have to do anything after that? Upon
Well, now, I've
approval.
been up there several times, I didn't see anything.
I'm not talking about this specific instance, I'm just saying, in general.
Most of the time, I do visit the places and
But,
check.
but do we have recourse in a scenario like if there's a site plan that's not being followed? Because if we don't, I almost question why even have a site plan at all.
My point exactly.
Yeah.
Of, prior to.
Is that where we're at?
I think it's one of the big things that
Okay.
seems to be missing in your enforcement process. I'm always amazed that you have a lot of interest, obviously, from residents. And, normally, this level of interest in planning commission business is unusual.
It's a Tuesday night.
They seem to be concerned about their notification of, again, follow through. If you're going to approve it, you need to have a mechanism to make sure it happens on the ground. It's a very important
Yeah,
step.
so what can, if anything, this body do to add that step? Or is that something to be?
So
taken up with
your
the commission?
site plan requirement is under Article 6, Section 6. And I suggested adding a 1, site plan requirements, and then that would remain as it is. But then you would have, add 6.6.2, buildings and uses to comply with approved site plans. And you would issue a certificate of occupancy. And when you issue a permanent, and I'm really surprised that you don't get calls from the bank. When I was doing this in a more formal setting, the bank, you could not convert a construction loan to a mortgage or commercial loan until you had the certificate of occupancy. And, it was people really, the banks rode people hard on this. And I know that this is a county, but I can't imagine that some of these things aren't issues. And that doesn't mean they won't.
Give an example, that Jenkins farm down there, and I think Mr. Terry's the one that told me about, what, 60 to 70% are cash purchases? You had a number.
Yeah, there's a lot where there's no banks involved as far as that goes. But I think what she's talking about is that if this developer borrows money, okay, to a certain extent to do their project, at some point in time, a bank's gonna want some closure there.
How their money's being used.
Yeah.
They convert the loan from a construction loan to a permanent loan.
And they wanna make sure, because if they have to foreclose on that property, they don't want any surprises.
Yeah.
And that's why they want that closure, that certificate of occupancy. And,
A lot of banks also require zoning verification letters.
Yes.
And it's very common in other areas. Most folks' jurisdictions charge for it. It's that common. And I haven't seen it here until last week. Somebody called the local jurisdiction and said, I want the zoning verified. I'm looking at doing financing this, and I want a zoning verification. I want a list of things that they wanted information on, or they weren't doing the loan.
Yeah, we've done that before, yeah.
I think the banking industry is driving a lot of the development industry, and so if you have a permanent occupancy, that you're done. You've done everything you've met the requirements of the zoning ordinance. You've met the stipulations of approval of the planning commission. You've addressed the site plan. If there is something outstanding, let's say that you had a requirement for a buffer area to be planted, and it's August. You don't plant anything in August. So you could authorize occupancy. You have them put up a cash bond or some form of surety for the outstanding issue. You issue a temporary, and within 6 months, they gotta come in and convert it, or you cash the bond and someone does it themselves, or the jurisdiction does. That is a temporary occupancy. There are times that let's say you've got a multi-building, like you had the site plan for your self-storage warehousing, and he's got 2 of them done, but not 6. So you're gonna authorize utilization of the 2, so you get a partial certificate of occupancy, and you work through all the buildings until you get everything done. That's permanent. So your goal is to work to the permanent, but there are a number of different steps to accommodate, even to the point of, I added in here, the building official may still issue a certificate of occupancy if it is determined that revised improvements are equal to or better than what was shown on the plans approved by the planning commission and meets the requirements. The building official can still approve those. So let's say.
You don't leave the building inspector?
No, I'm just pointing that way.
Okay. 'Cause Rob,
I understand.
I'm not, Rob,
I understand. But there may be changes on the site that were necessitated by site encumbrances. There might have been rock somewhere, that there's been adjustments on the site plan. So as long as the individual can prove or satisfy whomever they've addressed that adequately, then they can still issue the permanent certificate. The grading permit is something else I added in here, just from the standpoint of when somebody starts messing around with a piece of property, the individuals with the camp, they've disturbed 7 acres or thereabouts.
Yeah, about an acre.
Acre requires a SWIP permit.
Who typically does the grading?
The grading permit is it's like a building permit, like an occupancy.
It could be the owner, it could be the actual grading contractor.
I mean,
Uh,
Zoning do that?
That,
Zoning give the grade?
I'm just talking about the permit now, the implementation is another, we'll have to discuss that
I
separately.
mean, where do you get the permit?
Well, it would be usually most zoning ordinances do not name an individual. They say the county mayor or his designee.
Okay, but
Or-
you would get from the county the
You would
grading
get it from the
permit.
county. You would.
Okay,
And
that's-
you would,
that's what I was
you would
getting
charge for it. Let's say because, from, once again, just from, and my tenure is very short here, so correct me if I'm wrong. But if you have people that going out and grading sites to either obtain or place fill material, that should be, the county should know that.
So the grading permits, the fee structures, are you talking about a sliding scale, or are you talking about one set fee?
Most anything is a sliding scale. You do a plat that's got 10 lots, it's X amount. If it's got 100 lots, it's Y amount. So, I mean, a permit should always be a sliding scale. Even your building
talking about per
permits,
lot.
even, no, not necessarily, but even your building permits are based on square footage, are they not? Or value of improvement.
So that would include the
So-
roads and the residential things? They're gonna disturb.
If you've got a subdivision with 50 lots in it, you don't get a grading permit for 50 lots. Your plat has already done that. This is non-residential uses. So you're talking about anything other, unless, and this is in there, single family or up to 4 dwelling units is exempt. So we're talking about non-residential, or, once again, placement or obtaining fill material. I'm gonna build this site over here, I need some fill material, I'm going next to John Doe's house, and I'm gonna start digging, I need how many cubic yards of material? That's something that, can be onerous, it can get really out of hand. It sounds like, you've had at least one site where somebody came in and said, we're just gonna get some fill material, and it morphed into something else. Borrow sites will typically morph into something else. So it's trying to head that off. Once again, these are just things for you to consider. For the 2 meetings I've been to, your implementation of your zoning ordinance and your subregs seems to garner resident interest, opposition, and concern. So before you start doing, addressing anything else, I think if you fail to implement anything you adopt in an ordinance, it calls into question the validity of the ordinance you adopted.
So your suggestion would be to adopt something like this, but then we would need to put in an enforcement mechanism. So there's 2 things we would need to do.
Yeah.
And there needs to be a penalty
Well, that would be with the enforcement mechanism.
affiliated with it.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
You've got a stop work order. I checked that today. You've got a stop work, which is odd because you issue a building permit and you say stop work order, but you don't state why. Well, if you don't meet the requirements, or let's say you go on site and you've got a site plan and it's obvious there is nothing being built according to the plan, you don't wait. You stop it then. If you wait, you could actually, and you let somebody invest money, they've got a claim. You knew, you saw, you had complaints, you didn't do anything, so now you're gonna come out and stop me? You're too late, and a judge may agree with them.
Well, I agree with what you're saying there, and here's the issue that I have. So, let's say, for instance, that we have a subdivision, and we know that we're gonna have certain things in there, such as utilities. Typically, the utility company's gonna to ensure that's there, okay? But for the drainage installation and the grades of the street and those types of things, typically, you don't, for your small counties and your small towns and everything, they don't have that engineering service there available for them to
And
verify
this
that.
has nothing to do with the subdivision regulations.
I understand, but when we're talking here, I'm just saying in order to get that CO, and we're saying everything that's done is the way it's been done, somebody's gonna have to verify that. And that's what I'm looking at. Who's gonna be qualified to do that verification? That's why I was just curious as to why when we say we do a site plan and there's an engineer stamp on there, and we're gonna come back to that engineer when the project's done, and he's gonna give us an as-built showing that it's built or why it's not before we give him a CO.
These are not as-bills, and I'm not suggesting that you get as-bills. As-bills are expensive.
I know that. But how else do we verify that if you're not trained in that? Because if you got a street and it's supposed to be a specific grade, unless you have the equipment and the knowledge out there, you can't. The people here, they can't go out there and make that call. Okay. So what's happened is that they have constructed this, but they haven't constructed it as what the site plan that they have submitted. So if you're going to give them a CO, who's going to say, okay, they've done everything they're supposed to do? And they've done it the way that it's supposed to be done.
She covered that.
So who's going to do that?
So I'll say this.
Okay.
I inspected all my site plans. For over 30 years, I issued occupancy permits. I went out and I counted trees, I counted parking spaces, I measured ingress egress points. There is another way. It does cost the developer entity money. And, it just depends. And these are suggestions. You and the county commission have to determine what level of development and the quality of development you want. But I think you need to build trust with your community, and I think you need to address some of the holes that for at least the 2 months I've been here have already presented themselves multiple times in discussion of the meetings.
I'm not arguing that point. I understand where we're at. I understand where we need to be, okay, from that standpoint. What I want to know is that how the individual that's going to enforce this, okay, that's going to have to stand here and say, this development is completed and I'm going to issue a certificate of occupancy. Or if it comes in and says, I'm not going to issue a certificate of occupancy because of some discrepancy. My question is that credibility of that person, if they are not a professional, is that going to hold up in comparison to a professional that says, you're wrong, it does meet the requirements? That's where I'm coming from. I'm looking at it is that when we get out there and somebody's there in the field and they're saying, this is not right, and they're going to say, why is it not right? And you're going to say, well, the grade on this street is not correct.
You're talking about subdivision regulations.
I know, but
again.
it could be on a site plan as well. For drainage, say you've got a drainage area that's built there, okay? How do you know that drainage area is built per se as it was designed? Unless you have the proper equipment to go out there and actually measure it. So if you're signing off on it, you're saying it's okay. But when it's not okay, then where does the liability come back on the individual there? Does it come on to the person that gave the CO because they're saying, well, you said it was good, and we went on. So, or you go back and say, oh, you deceived me, and for that reason, I'm going to pull your CO, which you can at times do that. So I'm just saying, how credible does that person have to be for those standards that we adopted to be approved?
Would the same not be with the grading permits? Who's going to make sure those are
Here's a site plan.
Yes.
And you have the county mayor or his designee go out and look at this. And you're suggesting that there is no one and there may not be no one currently. But this is not difficult to go out and say, okay, 20 pads, count the trees that's required in the buffer, make sure that there's, they've installed the septic system, they've got the permit, get a certificate or some acknowledgement from the utility district that the sewer water lines went in. Your own staff issues the septic permit. What about this site that someone could not certify that they've complied with this plan and allow it to open and take reservations?
On that specific one, did we not cover that tonight, and wasn't all that addressed in the conversation that we had?
Well, they haven't built it yet,
They haven't
so
built it yet.
that hasn't been done, and
It hasn't been completed, but what they did is meeting what they've got on their site plan, correct? I mean, that's what we established and what we talked about tonight.
In my opinion.
By the people we have,
I thought that they are only camping, so there could not be any determination, and primitive camping was exempt.
It is.
So there can't be any determination of compliance with the site plan approved by the planning commission, because they haven't initiated,
Well, the
or
bathhouses and stuff like that.
they're not complete and they're not open. And the thing of it is, if you've got a non-residential entity and they've invested all their money in a business, they want that CEO. They can't start making money till they get an occupancy permit. And that's something that they'll set up and pay attention to. That's something that they'll address, that they'll be in constant contact with the county staff. Something that if you have regulations, but you have no mechanism for realizing it on the site,
John?
I like what Mr. Terry was saying a minute ago, and I think we're making this too hard. Mr. Marr, when we redid the subdivision regulations, he said, let's make sure there's a house site. And so what we did.
There's a house site, yeah.
What we did is said, okay, it has to be this many percentage on this scrape. And the surveyor has got to sign off. I like the thought about making the engineer sign off. The engineer, we're trying to reinvent the wheel and have all things for all people here at the county. And you're probably right. There's some things that nobody will be the expert in, but that engineer is not going to lose his license over this thing. And if we make the engineer certify that everything's there on those site plans before whoever, and if it's Tim or whoever writes the certificate of occupancy, it's not on us.
And
we
the
don't have that
carries the
liability.
expense.
Well, the developer carries the expense,
So you have to
but
pay
the
the surveyor,
engineer,
the engineer to come back
the
down.
engineer is liable for that. There's no need of us absorbing the liability. As you said, when somebody comes back and says the drainage project is not to spec.
And keep in mind, a surveyor cannot certify that.
Right. But the engineer can't.
But the engineer can't. So, one of my previous employments, and I was the only person, I know how you feel. And this was in a very quick growing municipality. And, I required a certificate, not of occupancy, a certificate of compliance. And so the seal, which should be an engineer seal when you're doing site plans, I personally believe. But they build the site, and then the requirement was before I could issue the occupancy permit, they had to provide a certificate of compliance by the engineer who sealed the site. And they had to come in and list I had a form they had to fill out, they had to put their seal on it, and they had to list any outstanding issues or any changes on the site. So it's basically an as-built. and the developer paid for it.
And that's what I'm saying, why do we wanna take on the liability? Why do we wanna take on all of that when we can just write that in the regs, that the engineer has to do it? I mean,
So
we're
moved, Mr.
reinventing the
Chairman.
wheel.
Was that in the city or county you're talking about? You work
It's
in
the
the
city.
city? Yeah.
I agree with
It's hard to
John
do
Moore,
in the county.
That's,
as bad as I hate to.
I mean, one way or another, you can accomplish it, but by not doing one or the other, you're at the mercy of them,
So you need to bring back next meeting is your thing that you had, that you're doing that.
all right, that's
You
pretty
do
scary,
look at- You
yeah.
need to bring that back so we can look at that and see if that won't work here.
Can we do that in this body, or does that something that has to go before the commission?
Well, you started.
we'd start it, make a
Start
motion.
it as a recommendation.
It would be a text amendment to the zoning ordinance, so you treat it just like a map amendment. You have a recommendation, either for or against.
Is that pretty easy for you to do, to come back to our, what month are we in?
would be all.
The August meeting.
Yeah, with that, and then we can
I
make that recommendation,
right.
send it on in.
I write code.
I like Ms. Perry's idea there on that.
But I have one question, okay? So that covers site plans, okay? If we wanted to add the same thing for subdivision regulations, could we do the same thing in subdivision regulations? And the only reason I'm saying that is that, and it's the big part is this, is that typically what we have is that on the water, we get a sign off from the utility company, okay? The same thing for the electric. And on the roads, we have our street department comes in and does that. But we don't have anything on drainage.
Do you require, retention or detention?
We have
do
in our
stormwater
code,
management?
yes.
Detention ponds.
So that would be for that because there have been drainage issues with subdivisions, okay? Because I don't think what happened was that the drainage.
Are you saying that one over Jefferson City was their problem?
All I'm saying is that the developer he took shortcuts, okay? And there was nobody there to follow up on the drainage. And then,
Was that the only thing the shortcuts brought?
more or less, I think, it was the drainage. And, so, I know we can be covered because they're not gonna get electric unless it's improperly. They're not gonna get water unless it's improperly, from that standpoint. And their septics, basically, in the county is gonna be based upon the soils, and they're gonna have to be approved for that, okay? When they build their roads, the road inspector sends people out there to do the inspections.
So can I ask a question?
Okay.
Is your road department certifying the depth of base, binder, and
Yes.
top coat?
Yes,
All
yeah,
right.
they are, yes.
They have to be.
So the only
depth.
outstanding issue you're looking at is stormwater?
It's stormwater and drainage, yes. And so if the system is designed, is there a way for us in our subdivision regulations to go back and ask for, just a compliance, a certificate of compliance, showing that stormwater has been designed as, has been built as designed.
So
Does the surveyor not do that?
Not drainage.
No, okay.
By state law, drainage, it takes an engineer.
Yeah.
You could just write a proviso that prior to issuance of the first building permit,
Okay.
certificate of compliance must be received from a licensed engineer certifying the stormwater capacity
Okay.
and,
Let me stop you right there and
Alright.
ask a question, because I might lose it. If it's in a subdivision and how do we keep that, how do we protect the buyers of those lots? Like ours, with like the house site and everything, how do we do that? Because if they buy the lot and then they come pull the permit,
They won't be able to buy the lot yet.
that's what I'm saying.
well, you require,
Well, it
yeah, you
either be a-
can, because.
Yeah, they could, because we could. require-
Because once you file that plat,
Yeah.
they can,
Yes.
you're not party to the sale of any of the lots.
That's what I'm saying, how do we, rather than on the first building permit, because they may not,
Yeah,
the
that's a good
developer's
point.
not gonna, how do we stop that?
Well, are you, how often do you bond as opposed to,
On roads,
when you
Oh.
bond the roads though,
or, yeah.
It's probably
You could
50-50.
ask for,
Yeah, about,
so before you release it, you could say before we release the bond.
yeah, we do that,
We
yes.
do that.
Now, and the bond is not tied to the sale of the property or the building permit,
No.
but it is at the expense of the developer.
Yes.
So you could use that mechanism.
Okay.
And before you release the bond, you could write a proviso for the engineer of record. And you're getting construction drawings, because surveyor seals the plat, but the construction drawings are prepared by a licensed engineer. You
No,
don't,
he's talking about,
No.
subdivision plans and site
Oh,
plans.
site plan.
so your construction plans for a road are sealed by a licensed engineer.
Well, the surveyor. It's the only one
And
we've
your-
ever done.
In your subdivision regulation, you allow a surveyor to seal?
They do, right, it's right, ain't it? We don't, I mean, there's no engineer on it.
Well, I'll look at that.
Okay.
You should, no, a surveyor cannot.
And
So
the
they're
road
not-
department always is the one that does that. They watch them build them.
Well, and they should, but still, you're approving a plan once again. You've got a grader and a contractor that's going out there. What are they building what plans are they building those road to? What specs are they building to?
County specs.
They're county specs, but
Has to be done by.
those are engineered drawings.
We saw
Surveyors,
several.
we would have. And then
Well, that might be
so then
something.
we ask for a certificate of compliance.
Yeah, I mean, that's the easy deal with it, is we just make that for everything.
So we don't carry the cost for anything.
You don't carry the cost, and,
No.
and when you have a engineer seal, on a plan, they just took liability, and the company they work for,
That's what I'm saying, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. But if we make that for everything, then we solve the subdivision and the residential part of it without going through all the hoops that you're
and
talking
keep
about.
in mind that when you amend the subdivision regulations, that authority rests solely with the planning commission. You don't have to go through the county
We can
commission
make
to
that
do that.
change.
Yeah, you can make it. Now, I say you can make it, you've gotta hold the public hearing,
Yeah.
30 days notice, so it's a long, it doesn't have as many hoops, but it's got a couple other provisos as far as
What I'm saying is
notification.
if we just do that straight across the board, we're not being partial to anybody. You develop subdivision, you come build a Dollar General or a Family Dollar or,
House.
you're a fella from across the water that comes by a beer, he wants to build a big beer joint and say chug-a-lug, whatever. You've got to have an engineer.
Now, that's a step up, you just had a site plan, I saw you balk at.
This one,
Oh,
that's not a site plan.
That's not something-
yeah,
No,
thank you,
we've
I was
never-
scared.
We've never accepted that. We've never accepted that.
I was pretty scared.
Okay. There's one other thing that I want, because you've got it in your notes here, and that I would like the county to look at as well. And it would help us tremendously, I think, in developing site plans, is the adoption of fire codes.
How much
For
of this do you wanna
commercial-
do at once?
For commercial.
I mean, building codes are not under the purview of the planning commission.
When you have to do.
That would have to go through
Come on.
But I'm
Building
just-
codes first for commercial?
I just say that the county, I would like to see the county adopt fire codes, per se. And the reason I say that is that, there's a lot of people that come here to do commercial work that are surprised that we haven't adopted any of those types of codes. And they're looking for answers because that's what they're accustomed to. And, you know, the county's not adopted any of the commercial codes as well. But with the fire codes, when you adopt the fire codes, it is gonna set a standard in there for fire hydrants, fire flow, and all those types of things for your sites and your subdivisions.
Now, do you have, that's also calculating, volume and capacity in your
Yes.
fire line for fire protection is
Yes.
volume and pressure, not
Yes.
just one aspect. And, you're looking at hydrants, do you have a county fire department? Is it volunteer?
It's all volunteer.
What are most of the size of your water lines?
It depends on.
It's all over the board.
All over the board?
All over the board.
So do you have a requirement that they be 6 inches? Or do you evaluate the fire flow at all?
In the subdivision regulations, we have a requirement
For
that
6
that's a
inches?
minimum that they go. But
But you don't look at volume or pressure?
No, because in Tennessee, the way that is, the water districts are an entity unto themselves.
Oh, yeah.
And so.
They're political powerhouses all their own.
So that water going to that 6-inch line may or may not have that flow.
Right.
And they could put an 8-inch water line in the subdivision and it still might not make any difference.
It actually can make the situation worse, and especially if those are dead-end lines and aren't backflowed, if they don't or if they're not backfed, if you're don't have a loop, that's a dead-end line, and I mean, I've worked in communities that the fire department stood and watched the structures burn, and they used the water they had to protect the perimeter and the adjacent properties, and they let the homes burn. And they don't have a choice. They don't have a
That's what
choice.
I'm saying. I mean, as far as that in the subdivision regulation, we've got the water spec in there, but the flow and all that is not under our purview.
Right.
See,
Well, it is under your purview. It's just that the dedication to the utility district, it is under your purview. By state law it is. But that doesn't mean that the utility district has to play nice with you.
That's a lot like going to somebody else's house and tell their dog to lay down.
Well, it's infrastructure that's going in the ground, and you're responsible for seeing that
Yeah,
design
I know
and.
that, but what I'm saying
I
is
know,
telling the utility that they are going to
So
do
is your
this.
utility district supportive, are they cooperative, or are they,
We're dealing
they're
with
notorious for not being that?
4 or 5 water utilities just serving Jefferson
Yeah.
County.
They do what they want to do.
I mean, I've worked in communities where there's a very active participation and level of support, and I've worked in them where they don't speak. So, I mean, that's just,
Well,
you're right,
Someone get
absolutely.
arrested here, I mean, it's fine.
Some of them, I'm not even asking.
it's a catch-22, it's a catch-22 on that. Okay, so what we've done in the past is that we've said, okay, we want fire hydrants. But then the utility comes back and says, I only got a 4-inch line, this, that, whatever, or I don't have the pressure, and so, you can put your fire hydrant in, but it's not gonna be functional. So that's misleading to a lot of people.
Yeah, it
Because they
is.
think
It's a
they've
false
got-
sense of
Yeah,
safety.
of security, yeah. And there are hydrants, and we had one just not too long ago, up 2570. We did a development there, and there was a fire hydrant already existing there. And we were gonna require another one to be within the 500 feet rule. And they come back and say, no, there's not enough pressure to even run the one that's there. And so my question was,
That happens a lot, too.
I said, why was it put in? Because the plans call for it. And I said, that's false security. You're just,
Well, also your insurance rating
Yeah, they're saving money
is
on
probably
insurance.
extremely high, and so your household insurance
Absolutely.
is very high.
but then people say, oh, I got a fire hydrant in front of my house, but you can't even put out enough water to water the garden hose.
Don't tell that.
I see what you mean.
I'm just saying that,
If it was easy, they wouldn't have called y'all to do it.
well, because here was the thing that I thought about. Before we went back, we said, okay, because the utility says you can't put a fire hydrant in there, because it won't be functional, shouldn't we have made them put one anyway in case there was a new line that was run eventually? It would be functional.
And I asked that question actually in Claiborne County about the huge subdivision. And just the nature of their issue, they're going to do a tank on site. They're going to do an elevated tank. But most developers can't afford to do that. I've actually seen a school that volume and pressure for fire protection, and the fire marshal, state fire marshal, because of public assembly, made them put in an elevated tank. And when eventually when the utility pressure and flow went there, they sold the tank to somebody else that used it for this purpose.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those growth areas, you know, it's just dicey out there, but I appreciate. And you also could set up some sort of fee that people pay into it, that you could go back if something ever happened, that you could go back and install fire hydrants if they ever found a way to backfeed it.
So, just to wrap up,
Yeah, I got one thing I just want to make certain of. You're going to bring us kind of a blueprint, certificate of compliance with the engineers and stuff that you had done to the
Yeah.
next meeting. Let us look at those.
Yeah,
Okay.
just like this. You know, I put this together over the weekend, and
so you can just get that fixed to where it would push it off on the engineer.
Or the developer.
Yeah. Okay.
He's the one who's gonna be paying, so.
And I'm happy to give you a motion on your next
It's
item.
okay. Okay. Is there anything else we got to discuss on another bit? Mine's clear. I want y'all's attention for 1 second after we adjourn, if I could have it, please. With being nothing else, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Okay, we have a proper motion. Do we have a second?
Second. See,
All those in favor?
We're on the same page now.
Guys, if you would, and Terry alluded to it a little bit in the opening prayer, remember the Nathan. Our community lost a really good man today. And children, he was a lineman for Appalachian Electric, had 3 daughters, 11, 3, and 4 months. Christian, and just one of the ones you could always count on to come in and do his job. So just remember that family in prayer, if you would, please. And thank y'all very much.